welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take that stack of research you have and boil it down into knowledge you can actually use. Today, we're tackling something pretty critical: agroforestry systems, or AFSs. We want to get past the hype and look at the real-world productivity. Just to recap, agroforestry isn't just, trees near farms. It's the deliberate integration of trees or shrubs with crops or livestock, or sometimes both, all on the same land. And it's important because, well, look around. We've got serious land degradation, climate change pressures, and this huge need to produce more food, but sustainably.
Exactly. AFS gets talked about a lot as a potential solution, a kind of sustainable fix. But our goal today is to really look at the hard numbers. We've pulled together a huge amount of global research, probably the biggest synthesis out there, to answer a core question. Does mixing trees and farming actually boost your total yield, or does it just look nice?
Okay, and to figure that out, we need a specific tool, right? You mentioned a key metric.
Yes, the land equivalent ratio, LER. It's absolutely fundamental for understanding if an agroforestry system is, well, working efficiently.
LER.
Right.
Can you break that down simply for us?
Sure. Imagine you have 1 hectare just for corn and another hectare just for, say, timber trees. You get a certain amount from each. LER compares that to mixing the corn and trees together on 1 hectare. If that mixed hectare produces more total stuff, corn, wood, maybe fruit, forage, than the 2 separate hectares combined.
Then the LER is greater than 1.
Precisely. An LER above 1.0 means the mixed system is over-yielding. It's more efficient in terms of land use. You're getting more total output from the same area.
Got it. That makes sense. So looking at all this global data, what's the big picture finding right off the bat?
Well, the results vary a lot, as you'd expect, but overall, the trend is pretty positive. AFS interventions often do lead to significant yield increases, especially, and this is key, in low and middle income countries, so LMICs.
Okay.
And particularly on lands that are maybe less fertile to begin with, where the trees can really help improve the soil.
Right. Okay, let's get into the tricky part then, the tension. Trees need light, water, nutrients. So do crops. What does the data show about when adding trees actually hurts the yield of that main crop you rely on? That's the fear, isn't it?
It absolutely is the fear, and the data confirms it's a valid concern. There is a trade-off. Integrating trees can definitely lead to lower yields for the companion crop, sometimes 20% or even 30% lower.
Wow.
And this effect is often stronger in places with already high-yielding agriculture, like a lot of temperate regions in Europe or North America where inputs are high, the competition is just more intense, and it gets worse over time generally.
Oh, so?
Well, take European alley cropping systems trees planted in rows within crop fields. One big meta-analysis found that the crop yield decreased by about 2.6% every single year for the first 21 years as the trees got bigger.
Hold on. 2.6% less crop yield per year. That adds up fast. That sounds like a deal breaker for a farmer focused on that crop.
It sounds like it, but this is exactly why LER is so crucial. Because even with that drop in the crop yield, the total system productivity, when you factor everything in, tells a different story. For temperate silvopasture, that's trees, forage, and animals.
Right.
LER values have been reported anywhere from 1.0, which is 10% more productive,
Okay, still good.
all the way up to 2.02.
2.02, so double the output from the same land?
Effectively, yes, double the overall output compared to separating the components. So you lose a bit on the crop side year to year, maybe, but the value from the forage, maybe higher quality forage, plus the eventual timber or fruit from the trees, it makes the whole system way more efficient overall. It shifts the focus from just the annual crop to the whole system's value.
That's a huge difference in perspective.
Oh, right.
Okay, so that's the temperate zone picture initial crop hit, but higher total system value. How does this compare to tropical and subtropical areas?
It's often quite different. In the tropics, where soils might be poorer or water more scarce, the benefits from the trees like shade, soil improvement, nitrogen fixation often kick in faster and can outweigh the competition much more obviously.
So you actually see the main crop yield go up sometimes.
Yes. For example, looking at maize globally, agroforestry systems in tropical and subtropical regions boosted the median yield by 16%. A direct increase in the staple crop.
16% more maize. That's substantial.
Yeah.
Let's zoom in on some specific crops. High-value cash crops first, maybe coffee. Shade is a big deal there.
Coffee is, classic example. For Arabica coffee, the most common type, the research points to what they call an inverted U-shaped relationship with shade.
Inverted U, meaning not too little, not too much.
Exactly. A Goldilocks zone. Zero shade isn't optimal, and neither is really heavy shade. The sweet spot for yield seems to be moderate shade, maybe 35% to 50% canopy cover. And tree density matters too. Often around 100 to 250 trees per hectare seems best.
And if you go over that, like above 50% shade.
Yields drop off significantly. You really have to manage that light level carefully.
What about Robusta coffee? It's known for growing in hotter places. Does it like more shade?
Generally, yes. Robusta seems more tolerant and often responds positively to shade, especially from more mature trees. The studies looked at trees averaging about 16 years old, but there's a catch, a quality catch. Shade levels over 30%, while potentially boosting yield, were linked to lower beverage quality.
So the farmer has to weigh yield against the price they get for quality. Another trade-off.
He's always a balancing act.
Okay, let's move to cocoa. You said this shows the trade-off really dramatically. How bad is the initial hit?
It's pretty stark. On average, cocoa yields in agroforestry systems are about 25% lower than in full-sun monocultures.
25% lower. Ouch. If you're just selling cocoa beans, that sounds like a non-starter.
It really does. If your entire business model is maximizing cocoa bean output, that figure looks terrible.
So where's the upside? How can that possibly be economically viable?
The upside comes from the rest of the system. Resilience, diversification. Because even though the cocoa yield itself is lower, when you add in the value from timber, fruit, or other products from the shade trees, the total system yield was often around 10 times higher than the monoculture.
10 times. Okay, that changes the calculation completely. That's LER in action again, but on a massive scale.
Absolutely. It completely reframes it. You get income from other sources, buffering you if the cocoa price drops or you have a bad harvest. Plus, these cocoa AFS systems often help the cocoa plants live longer and be more resilient. And as a bonus, they store about 2.5 times more carbon.
So it's less risk, potentially similar long-term profit, and environmental benefits. Makes sense. Let's switch to staple crops now. Things like maize, rice. These are crucial for food security, especially for smallholders. You mentioned maize yields went up globally.
Yeah, globally, the median increase was 7%, but the really interesting part is how those gains were achieved.
Okay.
The biggest jumps came from using specific types of trees. Broadleaf trees boosted yields by 53% on average.
53%.
And even better, nitrogen-fixing trees. Trees that naturally add nitrogen to the soil boosted maize yields by a whopping 60%.
60% more maize just by using the right kind of tree. That sounds potentially revolutionary for farmers who can't afford synthetic fertilizers.
It really is. It's tapping into ecological processes to provide fertility. Even simpler things helped a lot.
Like what?
Just taking the pruned branches and leaves from the trees and using them as mulch on the soil, that alone increased yields by 24%. Simple, low cost, effective.
Incredible. Okay, what about rice? You hear less about agroforestry with rice, maybe because it's often flooded. It seems like a weaker competitor.
It is generally harder to integrate trees directly with flooded rice, yeah. Competition can be fierce. However, compared to a baseline of no trees and no fertilizer, just adding trees to the system increased average rice yields by 38%.
38%. So trees still help significantly, even with rice. But how, if direct intercropping is tough?
It seems to be all about management and avoiding simultaneous competition. The most successful approaches weren't necessarily growing trees right in the paddy. Things like biomass transfer worked really well. That's where you grow the trees elsewhere, harvest the leaves and branches, and bring them to the rice field as fertilizer or mulch.
So feeding the rice field with the tree benefits, but without the direct competition.
Exactly. That, and using green manures from trees before planting the rice, those methods had a 100% positive response rate in the studies.
Wow.
But interestingly, if farmers tried intercropping and used fertilizer, yields actually went down in 95% of cases compared to just using fertilizer on a rice monoculture.
So if you're already adding nutrients, the tree competition outweighs any extra benefit.
Seems that way for rice, yes. It highlights how system-specific management needs to be.
This points to the trees doing fundamental work on the soil itself. Let's talk about those underlying benefits. What do trees actually do for soil health?
They do a lot. They significantly increase soil organic carbon SOC. We're talking increases of 26% to 40% in the studies.
That's huge for soil structure and fertility.
Absolutely. And they boost soil nitrogen storage, too, by 13% to 21% in humid tropical areas. Better structure, more nutrients. And crucially, this translates to better water management. Soils under agroforestry systems could absorb water much faster. Infiltration rates were up to 2.8 times higher.
2.8 times faster infiltration. In an era of weird weather patterns, droughts, and floods, being able to soak up water like that is a massive advantage.
It's pure resilience, holding on to water when it rains, making it available later. It's a huge climate adaptation benefit.
Okay, let's shift to silvopasture, mixing trees, forage, and livestock. We touched on the high LERs in temperate zones, but what about direct benefits to the animals themselves?
The big one, especially in warmer climates, is shade and shelter. Reducing heat stress is vital.
Right, stressed animals aren't productive animals.
Exactly. When animals are comfortable, not spending energy trying to stay cool, their welfare improves, and so does their productivity, whether that's milk yield or weight gain.
And the forage they eat. Does growing grass under trees hurt its growth or quality?
Not necessarily. In many tropical and drier areas, forage yields can actually be higher under partial shade compared to wide open pastures. The trees can conserve moisture. And for quality, the effect is generally neutral or even positive. It's quite common to see higher crude protein CP content in grasses grown under moderate shade.
Higher protein grass, potentially more grass overall, and happier animals. Sounds like a win-win-win for silvopasture.
When managed well, it certainly can be.
That brings up a key point. We've seen huge variability, trade-offs, the importance of specific tree types. If you had to point to one thing, what's the most critical factor for making agroforestry work? Is it the site, the climate, or something else?
Based on this synthesis, management. Management often trumps the site specifics.
Really, more than soil type or rainfall.
In many cases, yes. How you manage the system is paramount. Things like actively pruning the tree canopy to control shade levels, choosing tree species that are less competitive with your crop or forage, getting the tree density and row orientation right, thinning the trees as they grow. These aren't optional tweaks. They seem essential for long-term success and profitability, especially in systems like silvopasture or alley cropping.
So it requires active, ongoing, smart management. It's not just plant and forget.
Definitely not. It's knowledge-intensive farming.
Okay. And one last specialized system, windbreaks. Trees planted to shelter crops. Are those generally a good bet?
Yes, windbreaks show up very consistently as beneficial. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. Reduce wind speed.
Which helps how?
Less wind means less evaporation from the soil and less water stress on the crops right next to the windbreak. So better water availability, which usually translates to higher yields in the sheltered zone, especially crucial in windy or dry areas.
Makes sense. An easy win in the agroforestry playbook, perhaps.
Relatively speaking, yes. The benefits are often quite clear and direct.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. Let's try to wrap this up for the listener. The main takeaway seems to be that agroforestry can be highly productive.
Yeah.
But success isn't automatic, right? It really hinges on getting the design and management right for the specific place and the specific goals. Density, pruning, shade levels, tree choice. It all matters.
That's the core message, contingency. It depends, and we saw that clear split too. Tropical systems often give you that direct boost in crop yield relatively quickly, whereas in temperate systems, the justification is often more about the total system productivity, that high LER and the other benefits, the ecosystem services, the resilience, the diversification. It's less about boosting the corn yield this year and more about the whole package over time.
So for you listening, if you're involved in agriculture, sustainability, or even investment, the shift in thinking required is, well, it's significant. You need to look beyond just the yield of that single main crop. Think about the total value timber, fruit, better soil, carbon storage, water infiltration, biodiversity. It's a whole system view.
Precisely. Which leads to a final thought, maybe something to chew on.
Go for it.
A lot of the research we have, even in this big synthesis, is relatively short-term, a few seasons, maybe a few years. But trees, obviously, are long-term players. To really understand the yield stability, the long-term economics, the full benefits, we need longer monitoring. Studies that track these systems for decades, not just 2 or 3 years. Especially for perennial crops like coffee, cocoa, or timber trees.
So we need to think in tree time, not just crop cycle time.
Exactly. We need more studies that look at everything, the ecosystem services, the socioeconomic impacts for the farmers, and the yields over the long haul. You should really look for those studies that do detailed economic analysis, including the value of those secondary products, the timber, the fruit, the forage, like some of the work done on rubber agroforestry systems. That comprehensive long-term view is where the real proof of concept lies.